The 1970s. Oil embargoes drove gas lines around the block. Watergate shattered America's political innocence, and Star Wars revolutionized cinema. In this turbulent decade, certain musicians briefly seized the spotlight with songs that outlived their careers. Here's the untold story of 5 remarkable one-hit wonders. In the summer of 1972, a song about a port town barmaid who pines for a sailor captured America's imagination. Brandy, You're a Fine Girl by Looking Glass shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming one of the most recognizable tunes of the decade. But the story behind this nautical tale is far more fascinating than most people realize. Looking Glass formed at Rutgers University in New Jersey, where lead vocalist and songwriter Elliot Lurie first penned Brandy in his dormitory room. Contrary to popular belief, Brandy wasn't based on a real barmaid or a lost love. Lurie had originally written the song about his high school girlfriend named Randy. He simply changed the name to Brandy for the song, feeling it fit the maritime storyline better. But Looking Glass couldn't replicate the magic. Their follow-up single, Jimmy Loves Mary Ann, peaked at a respectable but underwhelming number 33. By 1974, Lurie had left the band, effectively ending their brief moment in the spotlight. Looking Glass became perpetually known as the Brandy Band. Today, Elliot Lurie has embraced his legacy as the voice behind Brandy. After attempts at a solo career, he pivoted to the business side of music, becoming a music supervisor for major films. He secured musical rights for dozens of Hollywood productions, making far more money in this role than he ever did as a performer. Perhaps most surprising is that the band received very little money from their hit. In those days, recording contracts heavily favored labels, and Looking Glass had signed away most of their royalty rights. It's estimated that the song has earned millions in licensing fees over the decades, but the band members saw only a fraction of those profits. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the unexpected stories behind the music that defined the 1970s, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. These songs may have been one-hit wonders, but your support ensures our content keeps coming. Share this video with friends who appreciate music history with all of its unexpected twists. Few songs capture the complicated emotions of forbidden love like Billy Paul's soulful Me and Mrs. Jones.
Me and Mrs. Jones.
Released in 1972, this smooth R&B ballad about an extramarital affair topped the charts for 3 weeks and won Paul a Grammy Award. The song's mature themes and Paul's jazz-influenced vocal style created something truly unique in the pop landscape. Born Paul Williams in Philadelphia, Billy Paul was no overnight success. By the time Me and Mrs. Jones hit, he was already 38 years old and had been performing professionally since his teens. Recording sessions for Me and Mrs. Jones were contentious. Paul initially resisted the song, preferring material that better showcased his jazz roots. The producers insisted, and Paul eventually agreed, bringing his unique vocal interpretation to the track. Until his death in 2016, Paul maintained that releasing Am I Black Enough For You as the follow-up single derailed his career in the U.S., though he maintained a strong following in Europe and Africa. He became increasingly vocal about how racial politics influenced his career trajectory, noting that white artists were rarely discouraged from making political statements. Billy Paul continued recording and performing until late in his life, releasing his final album in 1988. While he never regained his brief moment of mainstream fame, he became a revered figure in soul music, frequently sampled by hip-hop artists and celebrated by music historians. The irony is that Me and Mrs. Jones itself was revolutionary in its own subtle way. In 1972, a black artist singing openly about adultery without judgment or consequences represented a significant break from the sanitized love songs that dominated pop radio. Paul had created a mature, morally complex narrative that treated its adult listeners like adults, something that would become increasingly rare in commercial music. When Gary Numan's Cars hit the airwaves in 1979, it sounded like a transmission from the future. With its pulsing synthesizers and detached vocals, the song reached number 9 on the US charts and became an anthem of technological alienation that perfectly bridged the gap between 1970s glam rock and the new wave sounds that would dominate the early 1980s. Born Gary Webb in London, Numan originally fronted a punk band called Tubeway Army before discovering synthesizers almost by accident. Cars was written in under 10 minutes while Numan was stuck in traffic. After an aggressive driver threatened him, Numan found himself reflecting on how vehicles serve as personal fortresses, metal and glass cocoons that insulate us from the outside world. This observation about technology and isolation would become the song's central theme. Numan's appearance contributed to the song's impact. With his pale makeup, black hair, and emotionless performance style, he cultivated an android-like persona that perfectly matched the mechanical precision of his music. Despite Cars reaching the top 10 in America, Numan struggled to maintain his U.S. success. His follow-up singles failed to chart, and his robotic persona, so novel in 1979, was quickly copied and expanded upon by other artists. What many don't realize is that while Numan disappeared from American charts, he remained successful in the UK throughout the early 1980s, scoring multiple hit albums. It wasn't until the mid-1980s that his career truly declined, as changing musical taste and poor business decisions took their toll. After years in the wilderness, Numan experienced one of music's most unexpected career revivals. In the 1990s, industrial and alternative artists like 9 Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson, and Fear Factory began citing him as a major influence. Today, Gary Numan tours to larger audiences than at any point since his commercial peak. His later albums have embraced a heavier industrial sound, earning critical acclaim and solidifying his reputation as an electronic music pioneer. The music industry has finally caught up to what Numan was doing in 1979. Seasons in the Sun is perhaps the most unlikely hit of the 1970s. A song about death that somehow became one of the decade's best-selling singles. Canadian singer Terry Jacks took this melancholy farewell to number 1 for 3 weeks in 1974, selling over 10 million copies worldwide. Terry Jacks first encountered the song when the Beach Boys asked him to produce their version of it. After recording sessions with the Beach Boys fell apart, with Mike Love reportedly calling it too depressing, Jacks decided to record it himself, further sanitizing the lyrics to create a more sentimental, less ironic version. When Jacks first released Seasons in the Sun, record executives were baffled by its success. A mournful ballad about death seemed like commercial poison, especially in the era of glam rock and nascent disco. But the song struck a chord with listeners, perhaps because of its straightforward approach to mortality, offering catharsis during uncertain times. The song's success proved impossible for Jacks to replicate. His follow-up singles failed to make an impact, and by the late 1970s, he had effectively retired from the music industry. Unlike many one-hit wonders who spent years chasing past glories, Jacks made a deliberate decision to walk away. His post-music career took a surprising turn. Deeply concerned about environmental issues, particularly in his native British Columbia, Jacks became an environmental activist. He produced environmental documentaries and even successfully sued pulp mill companies for polluting Canadian waters. This environmental work has occupied far more of his life than his brief music career. The legacy of Seasons in the Sun is complicated. While often dismissed as maudlin or saccharine, the song represents a unique moment in pop music when a deeply philosophical topic, coming to terms with mortality, became the subject of a massive hit single. Few songs before or since have addressed death so directly while achieving such commercial success. Jacks has expressed mixed feelings about being defined by this single song. While proud of its impact, he's noted the irony that his environmental work, which he considers more meaningful, has received a fraction of the attention. In rare interviews, he seems at peace with his unusual career trajectory, from pop star to environmental crusader. Few songs captured a cultural moment as perfectly as Carl Douglas's Kung Fu Fighting. Released in 1974 during the height of the martial arts film craze sparked by Bruce Lee, this disco-infused novelty track topped charts worldwide and sold over 11 million records. What's most remarkable is that this global phenomenon was recorded as an afterthought in just 10 minutes. Carl Douglas, born in Jamaica and raised in both California and England, had been struggling for years to establish himself as a serious soul singer. After several failed singles, he connected with British Indian producer Badu, who was working on Douglas's album for Pi Records. With 15 minutes left at the end of a recording session, they needed a B-side for the planned single, I Want to Give You My Everything. Badu suggested they quickly record something about Kung Fu, noticing the martial arts trend sweeping through Western culture following Bruce Lee's films. Douglas improvised most of the lyrics on the spot, including the now iconic "Huss" and "Haas." The entire song was completed in just 2 takes, with minimal effort or expectation. When executives at Pi Records heard both songs, they made the fateful decision to flip the single, making Kung Fu Fighting the A-side instead of the forgettable soul track they'd spent hours perfecting. But this last-minute decision changed music history. But the success of Kung Fu Fighting created an impossible situation for Douglas. He became instantly typecast as a novelty act, with radio programmers and record buyers expecting more martial arts-themed music from him. His follow-up single, Dance the Kung Fu, attempted to capitalize on the same formula, but stalled at number 48 on the charts. Douglas released several more albums throughout the 70s, attempting to establish himself as the serious soul singer he'd always aspired to be. None achieved significant success, and by the end of the decade, he'd largely disappeared from the music scene. In recent decades, Douglas has occasionally performed at 1970s revival concerts, invariably playing his one famous hit. He's maintained a philosophical attitude about his one-hit wonder status, acknowledging in interviews that few artists achieve even a single worldwide hit, and expressing gratitude for his brief moment in the spotlight. Perhaps the most iconic aspect of Kung Fu Fighting is that a song recorded with such little thought or effort has endured for decades, regularly appearing in films, commercials, and TV shows. Its cultural footprint has far exceeded the serious soul music Douglas had hoped would define his career. The 1970s gave us countless one-hit wonders, but these 7 artists created perfect musical moments that continue to resonate decades later. If you enjoyed these stories behind the hits, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We're constantly uncovering the fascinating histories behind the songs that define generations. Share this video with friends who appreciate music with a story, and let us know in the comments which one-hit wonders you'd like us to explore next.